So while we're waiting, some folks are saying hello. Karen Flynn from the New Jersey State Museum says hello to everyone. I know there's so many friends on our participant list. It's actually one of my favorite things to do on the webinar is to scroll through and see everybody's names. So we're at 10:03. So we're going to get started. I know some other folks are going to be joining us, but we have a lot to go over today. For those of you I have not had the pleasure of meeting in person, I'm Adam Pearl. I'm president and CEO of ArtPride New Jersey, and we are so grateful that you're joining us today for our weekly or almost weekly COVID webinar. We knew better, and we took off last Friday for Memorial Day weekend. So just a little bit of housekeeping at the top. If this is your first webinar with us or your first Zoom webinar, if you do have questions, please submit them through the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we can either answer them directly via text there, or we'll tell you that we're going to ask them live to the speaker. When you do enter the questions and answers into that box, just take a look at what's live and what's been answered, so that we can get, if someone else is asking the same question, we can make sure we're utilizing time well. We will also, from time to time, throw up some polls. I don't know that we have necessarily any plan today, but you can see that at the bottom. And then there's also the chat feature at the bottom where you can send notes to the panelists, and where we can actually send notes out to everybody if there's like a URL that comes up that we want to share. And that, I think, is it. So I'm going to throw it over to with us, the amazing Anne-Marie Miller, as always, our Director of Advocacy and Public Policy, who's just doing an incredible job, as well as the rest of the staff. We have Jim Atkinson, our Director of Programs and Services, muted behind the scenes here. And most of the staff with us today, except for Corin Reif, our Manager of Marketing Communications. She's off today because it's her birthday. So happy birthday, Corey. Hey. All right, Anne-Marie, you're up.
All right, let's see. So now this is the part where my screen will probably freeze. Yep, there we go. So let's see, we're going to keep going. We're going to try again. Usually what happens when we start with, all right, let's try again. All right, so where are you in the pie? With just a little humor up front. You can, I was in another webinar last week, and this was part of it, and I just thought it was kind of fun. Oh my God, why didn't I take a shower? It's pretty high up there, along with relief at seeing other human beings. So we're gonna move on as to what's new. So last week, there were several bills in the House introduced, including the insurance relief bill, intended to provide a federal backstop for economic losses, including insurance claims and event cancellations included. So you should know that that's there. I also had a note that well, the Senate will be coming back next week. Yesterday, there was a vote on a bill that gives small businesses more flexibility with how they can use their PPP, which was created to avoid mass layoffs. The program allows employers to continue paying their employees even as their businesses remain shut. But the bill is sponsored by a Democrat in Minnesota, Republican in Texas, would give businesses seeking full loan forgiveness more time to spend the money, 24 weeks instead of 8, and lower the minimum amount that must be spent on payroll from 75% down to 60%. So that will move on to the Senate next week. The New Jersey Economic Development Authority approved the rollout of another $50 million toward a grant program for small businesses. You can see the eligibility is expanded up to 25 employees, and home-based businesses and sole proprietors would now be eligible. Applications likely to go live next week, and next Friday in the afternoon, there is a joint webinar with all the different chambers. So no matter which one you're a part of, NJBIA, the state chamber, the Chamber of Southern New Jersey, et cetera, check that out because there will be more information available. New on the ArtPride website, a few things. In discussions with the committee members, the council members that are working to advise the governor on reopening, a question was asked about how CARES Act funding is actually impacting arts groups in New Jersey. And so we have it's a very, very quick survey asking you if you received PPP, yes or no, and then just a couple related questions, and then also about unemployment in the pandemic unemployment assistance. So this way we can go back and compare to the total numbers for the state and find out how the arts sector is benefiting. So I encourage you to do that. There are some new rules issued regarding the SBA rules and the PPP loans about loan forgiveness. The guidelines are all out. You remember a couple weeks ago we had your part-time controller giving us information that was before these guidelines were released. There are 2 webinars actually happening today at 3 p.m. One on the right is Americans for the Arts at 3 p.m. They're both at 3 p.m. And the other is Network for Good, which I believe is YPTC. Your part-time controller is hosting that, is providing the information. So if you want to go in and you know, I put them both up because you may get shut out of one because I think they're going to be very popular. They're both available today. Also, there is a survey because we're surveying the world. This is the governor's survey asking about the impact on business. It is on the State of New Jersey website. The link is there on the bottom. And we are encouraging folks, actually an email went out yesterday. There was one from the State Arts Council as well saying, please respond to this. We want to see the arts register as business. And you know, they need to be seen as business, so please take this survey. Also on the state website, there is now a supplier registry to facilitate access to PPP, PPG, protective gear. So there's a link there on the bottom as well. It's for businesses to register on there, but also for you to know as you seek to acquire PPE. So, okay, that's there. The Performing Arts Readiness is offering some grants for institutional emergency planning, some pretty substantial grants. So please go to performingartsreadiness.org to get more information on this, and hat tip to Diane Felsen at the Arts Council for sharing this. Also understanding that as we're all looking at what's going to happen with reopening, Actors Equity announced some guidelines because so much attention has been paid to the audiences. So they are lending guidance and actual, you know, these are guidelines they want to institute for the actors on stage. So, you know, they're very specific. They don't want to be guinea pigs in this, and they're being very careful about the guidelines related to actors on stage, and God bless them. So now what I'd like to do is introduce Joe Simonetta. He's been guiding ArtPride's government affairs since about 2002. And he's with Public Strategies Impact, one of our major government relations firms in the state. And he's going to provide an overview of what's happening on the statewide level, because you've probably read some of the news, how it affects arts, history, tourism. And then when Joe's done providing the overview, we'll take your questions and answers. All right, Joe, go for it.
Thank you. I want to make sure I'm not on mute and you can see me.
Now we can see you, and you are not on mute.
I'm not on mute. Great. Thank you. So thank you, Anne Marie, Adam, Jim, for putting this together. What I'd like to do is give you kind of an overview of what has happened this week in regards to what the governor's fiscal plan is, or at least his proposed fiscal plan, and the legislature's responsibility in renewing that. Let's start right off the bat. The governor introduced a $41 billion budget to the legislature last February, prior to all of the stay-at-home rules and the upturning of our economy. That budget is no longer valid. It's moot. The governor and the legislature agreed to ending the fiscal year on June 30th, which is the normal fiscal year. But instead of adopting a 12-month budget, they decided to extend a supplemental budget through the end of September, July, August, September. Now, in that, the governor has proposed a new 3-month budget and is starting to predict what the revenue shortfall will be through the end of fiscal 2021. Obviously, this is important to everyone on this call, because a large part of our operations are affected by the state budget. So the governor did produce a July, August, and September, a 90-day supplemental budget of $7.7 billion. It does a lot of deferral of payments and disappropriations of about $4 billion of money that would normally have gone out during that time period. I'll give examples of that in a minute. The Treasury is expecting or predicting a $10 billion shortfall through the end of fiscal 21. When you consider the governor's budget was $41 billion proposed in February, a $10 billion shortfall is fully 25% of the budget. And whether you're aware of this or not, of a $41 billion budget, only about $3 billion is undedicated revenue or appropriations. What that basically means is you only really have, in a $41 billion budget, about $3.1 billion worth of discretionary funding that funds a ton of programs, both legislative priorities, administrative priorities, and whatnot. The governor is required to give the legislature a proposed 9-month budget that will carry through for the rest of fiscal 2021, October 2020 to June 30th, 2021, by August 22nd. So we'll see some more specifics about what the budget's going to look like for the rest of the entire fiscal year. But right now we're working on a couple of assumptions. The assumption is that there's going to be severe austerity cuts, programs, unless two things happen. The federal government comes through with some sort of state and local aid. Right now, that is very unsure. That requires the U.S. Senate approval of proposals that are floating around from the U.S. House of Representatives. And the second item is a $5 billion borrowing plan that the governor has floated to the legislature. Now, that runs into a little bit of concern. Under our state constitution that was proven during the Christie administration, bonding or borrowing requires voter approval. Voter approval, ballot questions on voter approval would not be timely enough in order to use that money as anticipated revenue in order to carry us through fiscal 21. However, the Constitution also says that you do not have to get voter approval under acts of God. There is not unanimity about support for a borrowing program. The Assembly is on board. As a matter of fact, a bill was introduced yesterday to allow the floating of $5 billion worth of bonds to get through fiscal 21. The Senate so far has not committed. Senate President Steve Sweeney on previous webinars and programs has announced he'd like to see what kind of revenue is going to be guaranteed for those bonds, which basically requires probably in his mind, in his estimation, tax increases in order to guarantee that we can pay those bonds and not affect our credit rating. But that's the two solutions at this point, without being devastating to programs and cuts. A $5 billion bond act and support from the federal government. Now, let's look at the next 3 months. The budget that the governor has proposed to the legislature, or has indicated that will be employed over July, August, September, freezes about $1.3 billion in spending. It carries a $7.7 billion price tag. It uses about $344 million in state revenue. It freezes almost every discretionary program. It includes a hiring freeze. It will make school aid payments flat, and it will defer the next quarterly pension payment program. So some of the specifics. There's about $1 billion shortfall in revenues from the gross income tax for fiscal 2020, which ends at the end of June. Fiscal 2021 collections for gross income tax are expected to be $4 billion less, or 22% less than the governor's budget proposal in February. The sales and use tax between now and the end of June, they're looking at a $1.1 billion shortfall, or about 11% lower than projected. And for the fiscal 2021 budget, about a $1.7 billion or 15% reduction than what the governor proposed as sales tax revenue in February for 2021. The corporate business tax, again, a big hit, $451 million lower by the end of June, and $1.3 billion lower projected for fiscal 2021. So as you can see, that adds up to about a $10 billion shortfall for fiscal 2021. The governor made certain directions to the Department of Treasury to review state spending across the board and find $1 billion in available appropriations that he can cut. Probably the largest I've ever seen a governor have to demand from his department. A transfer of $421 million from the surplus revenue rainy day fund, which was planned to be deposited on June 30th. That will not be made. Implementing a statewide hiring freeze, with the exception, obviously, of health-related and COVID-related needs, and canceling and reserving any pre-encumbrances, which will be deferral or elimination of any planned department spending. That should be about a $4 billion cut. As I said before, between now and the end of June, between now and the end of September, a $1.3 billion disappropriation freeze, and I will give that to Anne Marie to distribute, and a $3.2 billion cut in first quarter appropriations. Now, just to give you an idea, some of those appropriations in the extended first quarter appropriations, or the July through September budget, year 3 of the K-12 school aid formula, recreational improvement grants, neighborhood preservation grants, primary care practitioner grants, childhood outreach programs, pedestrian safety grants, Historical Commission Celebration of America, Amistad Commission, Battleship New Jersey, Count Basie, Boys and Girls Club, County College Operational Aid, Community Food Bank. These are severe cuts that total about $4.1 billion between now and the end of September. There is most appropriate to funding for arts grants is a revision in the hotel and motel occupancy tax in the 2020 governor's budget message. There was an appropriation or a revenue of $124 million. That has been revised to $76 million, or a change of $47 million. Now, as you know, or most of you know, that the funding that is dedicated to arts, history, and tourism is just shy of $30 million. With a $50 million shortfall, that is going to be very, very difficult for us to maintain and will require a huge grassroots effort. The revision for even this fiscal year through the end of June is a revision down from $120 million to $86 million, or a reduction of $33.7 million. That's the overview. That's where we are before we know what the governor's proposed 9-month or fiscal 2021 budget's going to be. As I said, the governor will have to introduce that to the legislature for their consideration on August 22nd. And with that, answer questions, Adam?
I'm just going to wait for Anne-Marie to jump back on here.
Okay.
Sorry, you keep going.
Okay. So actually what I was going to say, and then we do have a couple questions here, a few that are for you, Anne-Marie, and then someone that wants to speak. I will say that please, stay tuned, because after we get through these questions and answers, Anne-Marie is going to talk a little bit about those first steps in the obvious grassroots advocacy that we're going to be doing over the summer, working with folks on this phone call, as well as so many others across the state, of course, and our partners in tourism and history, and other partners across the state as we push for that appropriation in the FY21 budget. Okay, so I'm going to actually start with Anita Thomas, who is the executive director of Carolyn Dorfman Dance. Anita, please tell me if I got your title wrong, who has had her hand raised for quite some time, but I asked her to wait till the questions and answers. So Anita, I think I unmuted you. If you're still there with your question.
You have my title correct. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to have my hand up. I was just listening, so I must have pressed the button inadvertently.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just nice to hear.
Good morning, everyone, though. You
Okay.
can mute me back.
Okay. All right. All right. So questions. So Anne-Marie, there was a question from Tom Warder at Monmouth Arts that says, because the NJEDA is talking about the next round of NJEDA aid funding. So Tom is asking if they applied in that initial round of NJEDA funding, but didn't receive funding, when that next round comes live, are they already in the queue?
Yeah, they are. Tim Sullivan noted that there was a significant backlog. I mean, I think in the first round, there was $10 million. They had $250 million worth of requests. So it's like they're just putting more money in now. But I think they're going to look towards the backlog, but they're going to open it up as well, next week. So I think that's the short answer.
And I got Tom's title wrong because Tom is with Morris Arts, obviously not Monmouth Arts, my mistake. Okay, so we have a question from Jonathan Spinner. We have received a notice supposedly from the SBA that we are eligible for another loan up to $97,000 at a 3.75 borrowing rate. Is this a scam or legit? Should we go forward with an application? So I can actually answer this one because ArtPride was in that same boat. And I actually spoke with Greg and Victor, who did our webinar a few weeks ago from your part-time controller about this. Jonathan, I imagine you also received the advance from the SBA, the $1,000 per employee. And so that was supposed to be an emergency advance. And this is the follow-up loan that you're eligible for. And so it is a real thing, but I would say, without looking at that email, make sure that email in particular is a real one. The one that I got that was definitely legit was an invitation to go create my account in the SBA portal. And then I went in and was able to look at the loan terms. And we're going to, we're going to think about that, and there's a lot associated with that would be maybe even its own next webinar, maybe to have Greg back to talk about the SBA loan and the PPP forgiveness, but certainly legit. So Jonathan says, yes, we got it. That's the same one received. Thank you. Okay, so I have a question from Stephen Fredericks. Does the NJEDA additional funding directed to the grant program or the loan program? Do we know that one, Anne-Marie?
I believe it's grant program.
Okay. Jennifer North is asking, are reimbursable grants with funds already spent in jeopardy for Q4?
Is that, I'm not sure what, is that an Arts Council grant?
Must be.
So are you talking about grants that have already been expended?
So, okay, so I guess the answer to that question is that if you've received your payments, that's what, your first payments, that's all you can look forward to for the foreseeable future. As far as, interim reports and final payments on grants, I think they will be held for a period of time. I believe all money is probably frozen at this time, and if grantees did not complete the paperwork to get their first payment when the Arts Council opened the window initially, I believe and I believe there's not very many, but that that's not available at this time.
Jennifer, we didn't answer your question. Jennifer did type something. She said, Arts Council grants aren't reimbursable. What about non-Arts Council grants from other agencies that are directly paying for salaries, et cetera?
Yeah, I don't know.
Jennifer, we'll get Jennifer, if you want to send on, just shoot me your email on all panels. Let's connect with you afterwards so we can make sure we answer your question in detail. Mike Stotts from Paper Mill is asking, any update on the NJ Pandemic Relief Fund as it relates to the arts?
Yes, sort of. There's been a working group that has been informing Mrs. Murphy on the needs of the arts sector. You probably remember back to the survey that was conducted by the Arts Council that came up with the cumulative need of $30 million over a 90-day period since March 13th or 12th or whatever day that was. That information's been forwarded to the Pandemic Relief Fund director as well, and along with some suggestions for and the need, a request from the Pandemic Relief Fund. What will happen with that, request is unknown at this point, while they are continuing to address significant food and health related needs. But there has been interest and there has been response to them. So just stay tuned. That's all I can say.
All right. So Connie Isbell had a question. It says, we received an SBA loan application, but they didn't get the advance. Should they have received the advance? So I don't know that the advance was necessarily guaranteed, but what I will say is I know that we received our advance without any notification. It just showed up in our bank account. And if we hadn't just picked it up by going through, because we go through our accounts with a fine-tooth comb, or someone on the financial team picked it up, we might not have, noticed it. I got an email a few days after that advance came through saying, we'll let you know if there's any update in your, in your loan status. So you might want to double check that you actually didn't get the advance. But if you're sure of that, I don't know, Anne-Marie, have you heard of anybody getting the application but not the advance?
Nope.
Could be possible too, because I don't know if there was the limited amount of funds potentially, right, for that advance, and now that they've gotten around to processing, there's more funds for the loan. But that's a new question. Okay. I don't know.
That's it.
I'm looking to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Anita had a question. Oh no, Anita had the same question as Mike Stotts, I believe, needed. Let me know if that was not the same question Mike had. I feel like we missed one, so I'm just scrolling back. Nope, I think we're good. Go ahead,
Okay.
Emery. If someone else pops up, I'll let you know.
Okay, so in the meantime, you heard all that gloomy news from Joe about the state budget and where we are right now. So in preparation for that, and all this information just came out within the last week, right, Joe?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So there is an action alert up on the ArtPride webpage that asks you to support New Jersey arts in the FY21 state budget. This goes to members of the New Jersey Assembly and members of the New Jersey State Senate. It talks about there is a blurb up front when you go to the action alert page that talks about how, well, it's right there, how we're hurting, what our economic impact is, et cetera, and asking for their consideration as the budget needs and the negotiations are ongoing. So I urge you to do this, and to share the word with your friends and family, colleagues, etc. It's easy to do. It's easy to find your state representatives and there is a pre-filled letter to the legislators. However, I also urge you to include your stories. Let them know how it's affecting you. You've been laid off, you've been furloughed, your organization is running out of money based upon anything you may have received from the CARES Act. You're on unemployment, you haven't seen a check yet. Let them know what's going on. It's really, really important. And also on the homepage where the arrow is, there are other alerts. So click on those because you will find actions related to federal funding and also to specific legislation regarding not liability insurance, business interruption insurance, et cetera. And we'll have one up there on the charitable deduction as well. The only other thing is to make sure you consult the web page for updated resources. We're going to continue to update, and we'll also be putting in some additional resources related to reopening, so that there's some guides that have been published. I know we've referenced them at previous webinars. We're going to try to see if we can compile them in an easy to use directory for you to go through. Also noting that Jersey Arts at Home continues to offer the best of what's out there virtually right now throughout the state, so please check that out. I actually was last night doing some drawing over with the Princeton Art Museum and the Arts Council of Princeton. It was a lot of fun. Check us out back at artpridenewjersey.org. I want to thank Joe for all his help along the lines for so many years, and now he keeps us informed on what's going on, what the implications are relative to the state budget. We will keep you posted, and I guess we're on for next week. So,
Amory, we had one final question here. Paul Wheelahan asked, do we know the next steps from the organizations that were approved for the additional $5,000 from the State Council on the Arts?
no, I believe the Arts Council staff is reaching out to the individual grantees. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine too. I mean, their doors are always open for what it's worth. The at-home project is, of course, part of Discover Jersey Arts, our co-sponsor project with the State Arts Council. And I wanted to throw in, if you haven't had a chance to go over to artmattersnj.org, our other co-sponsor project all around the public value of the arts, which is, a message that's important now more than ever. There's new data up there, actually, new economic impact data up there. So certainly go check that out as well.
And use it. And we actually put a link in our letter to legislators, but use that data when you're talking locally, because you can get it on a county basis. So use that data along with your stories when you reach out to your legislators.
Paul, definitely check your email, because Diane Felson on the Arts Council staff says grantees have been notified, and there's a few people here, Anita Thomas, Mary Trigg, who have said that they just got their notification yesterday. And Mary Eileen Forout says, yes, emails went out yesterday, so please contact your program officers. Thank you, State Arts Council staff, always on top of it.
Thanks, everybody, for being here today, and stay well. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Anne Marie, and thank you to
Welcome.
all for being here.
Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend, everyone.